Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and I'm here with another monthly reading wrap up, this time for the month of April and then my May TBR. I have quite a few books that were in videos already, so I will make sure to link the videos up above when I am talking about a book from a video, but I still wanted to cover everything in just one nice, succinct place. Starting off the month, I was working on my Western European authors video for my Around the World in Books challenge, and I was starting with a very long, slow book. This is Lucky Purr by Henrique Pontoppidan. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It definitely has the feel of a classic, and hopefully you know what I mean by that. I don't know how to describe it better. It's just something about books that fall into the classics category have a certain way that they are written, they have a certain feel. This one definitely fits into that category. You are following Purr. It's not his full name, but he goes by Purr as he grows up. Essentially, he was raised by a really strict pastor, and you follow him through the journey of figuring out his faith, figuring out his life. I think it's supposed to be kind of like a not coming of age, but something along those lines, where you're really following this character through all of the moral struggles in their life. And it's a bit odd because I don't know that I feel like he ended up in a super great situation by the end of the book. I don't know that I felt like there was a ton of character growth. He definitely went through a lot, and he had ups and downs on how he was feeling about things, but I feel like he almost circled right back around to where he started by the end of the book. So I don't know. If you've read this book, let me know. This would be a fascinating one to read with a book club. It would take forever, but it would be very fun to discuss this with people. This is very much so a discussion book. It's geared to make you think, and I just don't know that I was in a great space to be trying to really process this book when I read it, but I don't know. Maybe something that later in my life I would want to read again and see if my thoughts change, but not anytime soon. Then, still for that video, I read The Thief Lord by Cornelia Funk. This is a really fun middle grade fantasy book. Like, it's technically a fantasy book, but that's very minimal on the magic side of things. But you're following these two boys who run away to Venice and end up in this little crew, I guess, under this kid who calls himself the Thief Lord. And you're following their adventures. It does eventually lead to some magical stuff, but it is more about just following them through the very real magic of Venice and the setting that has so much charm to it. And then you get a little bit of actual magic. But most of the magic really comes from the setting and the writing and just the general feel of something really magical, rather than actual true fantastical elements. But I did really enjoy The Thief Lord. After that, I read Death Has 1,000 Doors by Patricia W. Gray. This is a mystery book set in Andorra. We are following this lady. It's kind of a crazy setup, but her sister lives in Andorra. There is a family trust where the estate lawyers are based out of Andorra. She lives in Australia. And so they're like dissolving the trust. It's been 50 years or whatever. It's time to end the trust and like distribute the rest of the money. And so she has come to Andorra to deal with this and then also spend some time visiting with her sister who lives there. When she gets there, her sister is missing. And so she ends up on this whole journey with the cops to try and figure out what happened to her sister. There's a lot of crazy connections of people who are related to each other via somebody being unfaithful in a relationship. I guess, like, it's really hard to follow the family lines in this book. Overall, it was good. It's a little anticlimactic as far as like mystery books go, but for the most part, I did enjoy my time while reading it. You get to see quite a bit about like Andorra and the culture there. I thought that part was really done. And it's a good plot, but it's definitely not like one that's really going to stick with me for forever. And then I started reading books for my video of reading spring books, starting with the second book in Fablehaven. This is Rise of the Evening Star by Brandon Mull. I've really been enjoying the series. This is only the second book, but I am having a great time with it. This one, how do you describe the second book of a series? Basically, Fablehaven is about this brother and sister and their grandparents run a magical preserve, and they get involved in a bunch of stuff. This one is really, we're seeing the rise, I guess, of the Evening Star, but it's this like malicious organization that is trying to take down these magical reserves and break a bunch of like agreements that have been made about magical creatures and stuff like that. And so the first one I feel like really introduces you to the idea of Fablehaven and what Fablehaven is, and then this one really introduces this evil organization and shows just how far they've already infiltrated and sets us up for some very interesting things in the next books in the series. The next book I read for that video was The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. I enjoyed this one. It's not a new favorite for me. It's following this brother and sister who live in this town that borders a forest with a lot of fae in it. And in the forest, there is this glass coffin with this fae prince who has been in the coffin for who knows how long, just kind of has always been there. And one day he wakes up and they end up on a whole adventure. I think the second half of this book was far stronger than the first half. The first half really, I don't know, just feels a little meh to me. The second half, when they really start to dive much further into the fantastical elements of this, it gets a lot stronger. I think Holly Black is a very strong fantasy writer. I think she didn't pull through quite as well when it came to the more like modern day setup type of plotline. I'd be interested to read other books by Holly Black, but she's not someone that I feel like I urgently need to read more writing by her. And then the last book that I read for that video was Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I really enjoyed this book. We are following this little town where they have the lord of their region, their hamlet, whatever you want to call it, that is called the Dragon. And every 10 years he takes someone to his tower. It takes a girl to his tower. They are not seen when they come back. Something about them has changed, but nobody knows what happens in the tower. And so we're following our girl as she gets chosen to be the girl for the next 10 years, and things go really crazy. We get involved in the larger politics of the kingdom and the neighboring kingdom, and throughout the whole book you have this sentient wood that is kind of this malicious creepy thing. There's lots of scary things that come out of the wood and take villagers, and they are kind of living in constant fear of the wood, and their lord, the dragon, is the like magician who is put in place by the king to keep the wood at bay. And she gets involved in some really crazy stuff. I really enjoyed the ending. I thought it was a very well done ending that isn't how your typical fairy tale ends. My biggest complaint about this was the sex scenes. There's one actual scene and one almost sex scene, which is more than I personally prefer. This is an adult book, so like whatever, you could skim them, but it just felt out of place. It just didn't feel like it met or followed where I felt like those characters were. Like they really didn't have much of a romantic relationship from my point of view, and then all of a sudden you're jumping into a scene like that. Also, it happened like while they are surrounded and about to be attacked, and it was just like not the time. But other than that, thoroughly enjoyed that book. And then one audiobook that I listened to this month was kind of random find, but this is Kill the Farm Boy by Delilah S. Dawson. This is such an odd book. It is a twist on a fairy tale. You are following this farm boy who has a pixie show up and announce that he's the chosen one. And so him and his goat, that she turns into a talking goat, head off to seek their destiny. And then we have a whole other cast of crazy characters. We've got a twist on like the Sleeping Beauty story. We've got this wannabe dark wizard. There's witches around. There's elves. We run into all sorts of things. This is a very humorous book. It is not taking itself serious whatsoever. And fair warning, spoiler alert, so many characters die. So many characters. But I had a good time with it. It is maybe a little over the line of what I find funny. It is so blatantly humorous and out there that at times it was a little bit much for me. If you're going to read this book, highly recommend the audiobook. The narrator does such a good job. He is performing this book and gets so into the different like voices and things. He does phenomenal. But if you're just in the mood for something super silly, super out there, verges on crude humor, but like not actually, it's really hard to explain. But there would be like things where it seems like it's making a crude joke, but then it turns out that it like actually is that thing. Like there's a joke about someone having crabs, and it turns out that she literally has like an army of pet crabs. And like things like that happen regularly in the book. So I don't know, that part was a bit much for me. That like we're just jumping into that level of humor. I don't know. Not my normal cup of tea. I had a good time, but it was a little jarring at times. It got on my nerves a bit. I almost wish that this was more of like a series of novellas, because a little bit of this humor is fun for a while, but I feel like it was just a bit much in a full-length novel. There are a couple more books in the series. Might continue them if I'm in the mood for just a really, really silly book at some point. That just is so odd. So odd. But that is Kill the Farm Boy. And then the last physical book that I read this month was an Agatha Christie. This is The Seven Dials Mystery. I read this and filmed a video of me trying to solve the case. So I'm not going to talk too much about this one. I had a very good time. This is up there in my favorite Agatha Christie books, I think. I really enjoyed how the story developed, and I had a great time doing a solve along. So that video is not out yet. It should be the next book video that I upload after this one. So keep your eye out. I specifically read this one because I want to go watch the show. So I can now watch it and see what differences there are, but highly recommend if you're looking for a place to start with Agatha Christie. I think this could be a great one. It's a standalone. Well, that's not true. It's a superintendent battle book. Not one of her like major detectives, and he's like, for being the detective in the book, he's pretty off page. Like he does a lot of detective work without us seeing it. We're mostly following other characters, and I feel like the other books that I've read that are superintendent battle books are kind of like that too. So he's not the most prominent of her detectives, but I do enjoy him. We don't see a ton of him, and I don't really know his personality or his methods, but they're good books. I've enjoyed every superintendent battle that I've read. So they're a little bit more unique if you want something that's not following one of her like super in-your-face detectives. And then the final book that I read in April, I am filming this a little bit early, so it is possible that I finish another book before the month ends, but I have some stuff going on that I needed to get this done. So I got like another day, so maybe not. But the last book that I finished in April so far is The Book of Cold Cases by, I didn't pay attention to how this name is said, Simone St. James? Simone St. James. I found this book actually at a thrift store, decided not to buy it. It was like the book of the month hardcover version, and I was just like, let's be honest, I'm not going to reread most thrillers. So I decided to get it through Libby, read it on my Kindle, or listened to the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook. I decided through Libby, I listened to the audiobook. Wow, I am struggling. This is a book about this blogger who has a blog called A Book of Cold Cases, and she's a survivor of a kidnapping, attempted murder, and she's like kind of obsessed with murder cases now, and she's now an adult. She was a kid when that happened, and then she's following along. We also learn about Beth, who was put on trial as the lady killer, a serial killer. It's like 30 or 40 years after that. And she was acquitted, and no one's solved the case still. And so she's kind of lived her whole life with people still assuming that she's the murderer. And so our blogger decides to, she runs into her one day Beth agrees to give her an interview, and she decides to try and solve this case. And we follow her along. There's a little bit of like a horror element into this book. Like, it's a little supernatural. But what I appreciated about the supernatural is it was almost used as like a storytelling device, and it wasn't necessarily super key to the solution to the thriller. And I really appreciated that. I don't love supernatural thrillers. We still got a very conclusive ending. We still like really wrapped everything up, but it just had this extra creep factor because of the supernatural elements, and I thought that it was very well done. I don't know what else to say about that, but it leans a little horror-y. The like audiobook narrator does a very good job in making it sound so creepy and like really make you feel like you need to like look over your shoulder a little bit. I thought it was super well done on that side of things. I really liked the characters. We have 2 narrators if you listen to the audiobook, one for Beth, one for your blogger girl, and then there's a 3rd narrator that shows up for just a minute to read some trial transcripts. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. If you're looking for a fun thriller, it's definitely an adult book, but that mostly comes out in like the language and it being a pretty freaky book. But that is a book of cold cases. I had a good time. I would definitely read another book by this author. I think she has a few other ones out. And that is everything that I read in April. So now I want to talk really quickly about my May TBR. I've tried to keep it somewhat more reasonable. I don't know if I succeeded. I have a couple videos that I want to film that require me to like pick books on the spot for that. And so I wanted to keep my TBR maybe a little more reasonable so that I have time to read everything that I want to do. Also, May is just a crazy month when you work at a school. It's our last month of school. We have a bunch of graduation and stuff like that. So we'll see how I do on my reading plans. But I have 2 books that I've actually started that are going to be on my TBR. I was trying to finish them in April, didn't quite make it happen. First one I am reading on my Kindle through Libby. This is Green Teeth by Molly O'Neill. It is a fantasy book about a lake monster who has a witch thrown into her lake, and they end up teaming up to try and kick the pastor out of the town. I am currently, 22% of the way through, and I'm having a very good time. It is just a like very simple, straightforward, cozy fantasy vibe, and it's going great. It's perfect spring vibes, I feel like, if you're looking for something for spring. And then I'm also in the middle of The Robe by Lloyd C. Douglas. This is actually a reread for me, and I'm taking it very slow. I'm trying to annotate it. I'm really not that far in. I am 38 pages into this book, so I need to make some more progress. I would love to have this done by the end of May. This one is a historical fiction book about a soldier who was part of the group that crucified Christ and what his life where his life goes after that event. And then another one that I just want to read. I've got this one for my birthday from my husband. This is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. This is book 2 in the Emily Wilde series. I think these covers are just beautiful. I love the magical, whimsical thing. I actually was very pleasantly surprised by book 1. This isn't my normal cup of tea, but I'm looking forward to reading the second one because I did really enjoy the first one. One of the more heavy books, not heavy, that's wrong. One of the more, lengthy books that I want to read is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I need to get this one out of the way. Well, I want to read this one, but I also need to get it out of the way before I feel like I want to continue the Stormlight Archive. And so I want to make this one happen soon so that I can get going on that again. It's a Brandon Sanderson. I don't know how to describe it to you succinctly, so I'm not even going to try. The next one is 9 Goblins by T. Kingfisher. This is a very tiny book, so makes this a little more reasonable. I don't know a ton about it. I know that this was originally self-published. It has now gotten traditionally published, and I think it's just like a fun, short little book where we follow these goblins around. And that's all I know about it. And then I also would like to read a couple books that I don't own physically. The first one is Last Pharaoh. This is the final book in the Theodosia Throckmorton series. I've been doing a reread for the last little bit, and I'm on to the last book. I'd love to finish it. These books are just great. They're middle grade fantasy books. I've talked about them a lot, so I won't dwell too much on that. And then the final book that I want to read in May is actually an audiobook that I recently found. This is The Darwin Affair by Tim Mason. It is a like historically set murder mystery. I think someone, yeah. Surrounding like Darwin's and his theories. It's specifically surrounding Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. How you tie a murder mystery into that, I don't know, but I'm looking forward to finding out. So that is my May TBR, everything I read in April. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them. If you have any recommendations for me. I'm always looking for more books, even though I have a never-ending TBR list. But yes, I'm just going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.